Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't been here before, let me introduce myself. I'm Marilyn. I'm glad you're here, and I have a wonderful topic, I think, for you today. But before I begin, I just wanted to tell you that I've been watching everyone's videos, and I'm happy that you're all having, I hope, a wonderful holiday season. I'm pretty low-key myself because I've been dealing with some health issues, and I'm trying to get my body back into a place where I can be more active. But I have been watching everyone's channels, and I've been getting so many recommendations. So today I thought I had an interesting topic that I saw a few people on Booktube do. And the topic is, if I only had 10 books to reread from my shelves. Now, I don't have a big shelf. I have this shelf behind me and another small one on the left of me. And it's a small shelf. It's not tall at all. But these are the books that I want to keep. These are the books that made me happy in some way, made me think in some way, and I have been shuffling them around all afternoon, deciding which ones that I wanted to pick. I could have picked another 10 books from my shelves that I want to reread, but I think this is my gold standard because one of them I'm reading right now. So let's start off with one of my favorite books of all times. It was, and I've talked about it, it takes place in the neighborhood where I was brought up. And Lindy, my good friend Lindy, is visiting this area, and she's reading this book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. Now, it's a beloved classic about a young girl's coming of age at the turn of the 20th century. I'm sure all of you have read about Francie and her trials, tribulations, and successes. And this is the anniversary edition, the 75th anniversary edition. And coincidentally, next year, I am going to be 75 in the end of the year, and I have a lot of changes to my channel that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of videos. But anyway, I thought that it was apropos for me to have this first on my list. If you haven't read it, please do. It gives you such a wonderful idea of what it was like for the immigrants that came to Brooklyn at that time and the struggles that they had. And for me, it's extra special because, as I said many times, the street where she lives and she talks about were cold water flats that were torn down in the early, I think it was late 40s or early 50s when I moved in to the projects, as they called them, 1955 or 4, and we weren't the first ones there. And I can tell you so much about these housing projects. It's been a national treasure in the U.S. treasures. I mean, it is a wonderful place to live, or it was. I think it still is compared to what Francie and her parents went through living in those cold water flats. And when I was growing up, there were still those cold water flats. Anyway, I urge you to read this book. It's on my shelves, and if I had to reread only 10 books, this is definitely one of them. I don't know if I'm going to read it in print or on the Kindle version this time. I'm tempted to read it in print, so just because that's the way I first read it. Okay, so what's my second book? My second book is, of course, a mystery, and it's an Agatha Christie. But which one, right? Which one? So I looked on my shelves, and I have 2 copies of Death on the Nile. So I thought I would talk about Death on the Nile. I could have easily chose 10 other books by Agatha Christie, but this one is special to me for not only because I have 2 copies, but because I recently saw a movie that was released. I think it was Kenneth Branagh was, if I'm spelling that wrong, I will, I'll put the information down in the comments. But the movie was wonderful, by the way, and I did not know the ending, even though I read this so many times. I urge you to read this book and also to watch the movie. Okay, so what is it about? It's a Hercule Poirot, and he embarks on a journey to Egypt, and this is one of Agatha Christie's famous mysteries, of course. And I saw this, not only the last remake of it, but I watched another remake of it. But this one was wonderful. But so the tranquility of a cruise along the Nile was shattered by the discovery that Lynette Ridgway had been shot through the head. She was young, stylish, and beautiful, a girl who had everything until she lost her life. Hercule Poirot recalled an earlier outburst by a fellow passenger. And I don't want to read anymore because I think it gets into the spoilery territory. But it does say something. When it comes to fiendish plotting, there's no one to compare with Agatha Christie, and that is the truth. And something I found out recently that I read about was that she usually had a murder case that was true crime that she based her mysteries on. And I did not know that, and I found that very fascinating for someone who loves crime. Now, these books are not going to be in order of the 10 books I want to reread from my shelves. But the next one I want to talk about is a book that I discovered through Booktube and I buddy read. And that is Edna O'Brien, The Country Girls. And the reason that I'm talking about this one is because this gave me a feeling of what Irish literature could be. I had never heard of Edna O'Brien. And what is it about? Well, it's really a memoir about her life, set in more of an historical autobiography. So in the early 1960s, well, I should say a fictional autobiography. In the early 1960s, in a country village in Ireland, Kathleen Brady and her attractive friend Baba are on the verge of womanhood and dreaming of spreading their wings in a wider world, of discovering love and luxury and liquor and above all fun. With bawdy innocence, shrewd for all their inexperience, the girls romp their way through convent school to the bright lights of Dublin, where Kathleen finds the suave, idolized lovers rarely survive the real world. Now, this is a trilogy, and I read the whole trilogy, but I would start with Country Girls if I was to reread it again. The next book I also discovered through Booktube, a very special booktuber, Lil's Vintage World, and I discovered a lot of English literature from this period through her channel. But this one is my favorite, and the author is also my favorite. Even though I didn't love everything, I read almost every book that she wrote. And she's not very well known. Her name is Barbara Cummins, and this is the wonderful Our Spoons Came from Woolworths. And I talked about this ad nauseum, so I won't really say too much about it. The introduction is by Maggie O'Farrell, so that tells you something about the quality of Barbara Cummins' writing. And I'll just read a little bit of it, what Maggie O'Farrell said. Pretty, unworldly, well, this is what it's about. Sophia is 21 and hastily married to Charles, a young painter, an artist's model with an eccentric collection of pets. She is ill-equipped to cope with 1930s Bohemian London, where poverty, babies, however much loved, and husband conspire to torment her. Now, I read a lot about Barbara Cummins, and this is really her early life. She was an artist, and so Maggie O'Farrell says, I defy anyone to read the opening pages and not to be drawn in as I was. Sophia is a heroine on every sense, and one you will never forget. I have to read the beginning because that was too much of a, I have to give it to you. And it really made me want to read it. I told Helen my story and she went home and cried. And you will cry, you will laugh, and there's a scene in here that I want to reread for the rest of my life. I want to reread this book. Okay, so that's Our Spoons Came from Woolworths. The next book is a classic, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's read in schools, and it's Night by Elie Wiesel. And it was winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. And it says, a slim volume of terrifying terror. And he's the author of more than 40 international acclaimed works of fiction and nonfiction. Elie Wiesel was. And he was born in Signet, Transylvania, and was a teenager when him and his family were taken from their home in 1944 to the Auschwitz concentration camp and then to Buchenwald. And Night is the terrifying record of his memories of the death of his family, the death of his own innocence, and his despair as a deeply observant Jew confronting the evil, the absolute evil of man. And if you haven't read this, it's beautifully written. It'll make you cry, but it'll also make you think. And I will reread this for the rest of my life. So that is Night. The next book, of course, has to be a Jane Austen. And when I first joined Booktube, Jane Austen July was a new thing to me. And I had read Jane Austen in my 30s when I read in a newspaper article, magazine article, that reading Jane Austen will cure anybody's depression. I don't know about that, but it did help mine. And I could have picked Pride and Prejudice. In fact, I have it here. But at the end of my thinking, which one would I want to reread, I picked Persuasion. I can say I picked it for the ending, or because that the heroine is a little bit older. But something about Jane Austen's writing is that you find out something different on every reread. So I think that's the reason that I picked a Jane Austen for the 10 books I would reread if there was on my shelves, if that was the only books I could reread. So of course this is our heroine, Anne Elliot, and seems to have given up on present happiness and resigned herself to living off her memories. More than 7 years earlier, she complied with duty. Persuaded to view the match as imprudent and improper, she broke off her engagement to a naval captain with no fortune, ancestry, or prospects. However, when peacetime arrives and brings the Navy home, and Anne encounters Captain Wentworth once more, she starts to believe in second chances. This is, I think, if you love romances, and I'm not a romance reader in general, unless it's mixed with something else, you will love this. If you love good writing, you will love this. If you love Jane Austen, you will love this. So my pick on my shelves is Persuasion. The next book on my list is a translated fiction that I had the pleasure, not this one, but I read the two following. It's a trilogy, and I read it with Lindy from Lindy Magpie Reads, which I'll have below. And the first one, I have to say, blew me away. It's not my favorite of the trilogy, but because it was the first one and I had never read Cora Sandel before, this is Alberta and Jacob. And what drew me into this book was that a young girl, Alberta, this is also called the Alberta trilogies, could be living such a different life that I did as a girl in Norway, in the north of Norway, and have so much in common with me. When we encounter a book that reminds us that we're not alone, I think that's the best kind of reading. So what is this about? The first of the trilogy is Alberta living a very difficult existence in her hometown. She's not accepted. She has a difficult relationship with her mother and her brother, which oddly is not that much in the story, is her something that she clings to, someone that she clings to because of the many difficulties that she has growing up. And I'll just read you a little bit of the beginning. It is so well written, first of all. It's imaginative, intelligent. She's a misfit trapped in a stiflingly provincial town in the far north of Norway, whose only affinity is for her brother Jacob. Like I said, so the church clock shone like a moon in the night sky. This is the part that really got me interested in the book. When Alberta woke up in the morning, she was always warm. It was the only time of day when she was not cold. Her limbs were snug and relaxed, physically at peace. Nothing could be better. She would lie full length, her legs straight out. The whole bed was warm, and her body felt as if it had uncurled, as if a shell surrounding it had been broken. She stretched herself, feeling agile and supple, able to treat her warmth lightly. Sometimes in her arrogance, she would stick one foot out into the cold, simply in order to feel it warming up again as soon as she drew it back. At night, she would lie huddled and trembling beneath the blanket for hours, chilled to the marrow. Anyway, she talks about, I wanted to go on and on, but I won't do that to you. But the cold is very much part of the book, and how she hated it, and how she convinced, for example, the housekeeper to let her drink coffee to warm up. I just loved this book, and it made me read the next two parts of the trilogy, which are Alberta and Freedom and Alberta and Alone. And I'll have those down in the description box. Okay, so what's the next one? The next one is a book that I read in the 60s, maybe 69. It was written in 67. And it also reminded me of another part of my culture. And it's called Down These Mean Streets by Piri Thomas. And this is also an edition. I think it's the 25th edition. Well, no, it can't be. Now, this was written in 67. This must be the 50th edition because it's not brand new. And they're comparing this book with Eldridge Cleaver's Soul on Ice and the autobiography of Malcolm X. So it is a special book. And so Piri Thomas, like me, but unlike me, is Puerto Rican, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Puerto Rican. And he was living in Spanish Harlem. And this is, of course, it's an autobiography. And he powerfully relates how he was lost, even within his own family, and sought his identity through drugs, street fighting, and armed robbery, nearly becoming yet another statistic by the age of 22. But if you think this is just that, you'd be wrong. It's a historical account of what it was like to live in Spanish Harlem during that time. And I have a sister who was brought up in Spanish Harlem, so I would go there very frequently, and not so much in the late 60s, but it was just fascinating to me to read about a place also like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn that I knew. I just want to read you the first line and see if it starts with a prologue. And I think it's just wonderful. Want to know how many times I've stood on a rooftop and yelled out to anybody, "Hey world, here I am. Hello world, this is Piri. That's me. I want to tell you I'm here. You bunch of mother jumpers. I'm here and I want recognition." Whatever that, another word, but he doesn't really write it, would mean. Man, how many times have I stood on the rooftop of my broken down building at night and watched the bulb-lit world below, like somehow it's different at night. This is my Harlem. There ain't no bright sunlight to reveal the stark naked truth of garbage leopard streets. Gone is the drabness and hurt. Covered by a friendly night, it makes clean the dirty-faced kids. This is a bright mundo world. My streets, my barrio de noche, with its thousands of lights, hundreds of millions of colors, mingling with noises, swinging street sounds of cats and curses, sounds of joys and sobs that make music. If anyone listens real close, he can hear its heartbeat. Now, one thing I forgot to say is that Piri Thomas had a hard time also because even in his own family, he wasn't accepted because of colorism. He was Afro, Puerto Rican, and some of his parents were white, like me. I'm a white Puerto Rican. So, and I know personally that there was colorism, and probably still is, in the Latino world. And I'll give you just a little example, is that my grandmother, who was very dark-skinned, Puerto Rican, preferred me as a grandchild rather than some of her other children because my father was also a white Puerto Rican. And she loved my father, but it was also more than that. I think it was the colorism, that white was good and dark wasn't. And so of course that brought me a lot of trouble with my cousins because no one likes the person who is says, oh, she's just like her father. She had blue eyes, which I did when I was young. But despite that, so I sort of experienced the opposite of what Piri Thomas experienced. And I was also brought up in a bad neighborhood. It wasn't a Spanish Harlem, it was Williamsburg in the 60s. But this book is a page turner. If you want to find out what it's like to be someone like Piri Thomas, who had to deal with prejudice even among his own family and all of the dangers that the street provided, but also a look at the culture, Puerto Rican culture. So I would reread this book. I haven't reread it yet, but I will definitely, and I bought this, so I want to reread it. I mean, I bought it really not that long ago. The last book I want to talk about is a book by Josephine, and I hadn't read her before I joined BookTube, and I liked her so much that that I bought all her books, and it's in my collection. But this one was special to me. I read it with a former booktuber, and she has passed away since. And the book is Bratt Ferrar. Now, Josephine Tey is known for many, many mysteries and suspense. Usually her books are quite short, but this one is pretty meaty. And so it's a best-selling classic. I really enjoyed it because it took me places that I didn't think that the book was going to go. So in this surprising tale of mystery and suspense, a stranger enters the inner sanctum of the Ashby family, posing as Patrick Ashby, the heir to the family's sizable fortune. The stranger, Bratt Ferrar, has been carefully coached on Patrick's mannerisms, appearance, and every significant detail of Patrick's early life, up to his 13th year when he disappeared. I think that's all I'll tell you about this, and I want to show you the cover. So he sort of finagles his way into this household, kind of claiming that he's the lost long brother who disappeared when he was 13. And Robert Bernard gave the introduction. And if I'm correct, I think he's also a mystery author. And it says, mystery readers who have never encountered Josephine Tey are in for a delicious treat. Tey belonged to the golden age of British crime writing, 1920 to 1950. Yes, so Robert Bernard is the author of more than 30 crime novels, including most recently Bad Samaritan and a collection of short stories. So Josephine Tey's most well-known book is The Daughter of Time. And everyone loves that book, but I have to say that it really didn't do it for me. She didn't convince me. She was investigating King Richard III, the murder of the princes in the Tower, and she's saying that he didn't do it. But I still think he did. But I really, really enjoyed this book. It twists and turns. It's a very different, she writes different kinds of mysteries. So if you have read Josephine Tey, please let me know down in the comments. Did you like Daughter of Time, or did you feel that like I did? Have you read any other books? And I have a collection of Josephine Tey, but for some reason, this is the book that I'm drawn to read again. I think that I will enjoy that. Now, like I said, I could have picked 20 more books from my shelves, even though I don't have a big collection of books. But the books that I keep are the books that I want to reread anyway. So tell me, what are some books that you want to reread? Let me know down in the comments. And please, I would really appreciate if you gave this video a like if you liked it, if you did like it. And I will be back very soon with another video. It's going to be my 300th video, next video. So I have a lot of plans, and I wanted to just tell you, for these 4 years that I've been here, I've really, really enjoyed myself. And I surprised myself because I really didn't take much of a break. I didn't take more than a 2-week or 3-week break out of all those 4 years. So going into the 5th year, I'm still here. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Have a wonderful holiday month. Aloha.